Good afternoon and welcome to Rockwell Automation Presents Reinventing the Supply Chain Management and Warehousing Industry. I'm Jayshree Mendes, editor of Manufacturing Today and also your host for the next 2 hours. The reason we are looking at supply chain and warehousing is because that is the focus now in this pandemic that has been vastly affected. While operations were going on at the background, it was the supply chain that was mainly affected mainly because of the lockdown. Supply chain plays a very, very critical role, right from procurement till it reaches the last mile connectivity. That is the only thing that plays a continuous role. And one of the reasons we want people to understand how you can rethink supply chain now, especially in these times. Today, we will have, let me run it through the agenda first. We have a panel discussion. Then after that, followed by a presentation. Then we have a second panel discussion, and then we have a presentation again. A little bit about Rockwell Automation. I'm sure everybody knows Rockwell Automation, but I'd just like to introduce the company. It is the largest company in the world that is dedicated to industrial automation and information. Across the globe, its brands are recognized for their excellence. Their keen focus on technology innovation, domain expertise, and integrity, and corporate responsibility fuels their success. Manufacturing Today, the magazine, on the other hand, has been around for 11 years. We are a Dubai-based company who have been in India for the last 12 years. And now Manufacturing Today is just about completed 11 years this year. We are also known for our awards, which is into its 9th year. Of course, sadly, we can't have our awards this year because of pandemic, but we will work out something, going forward. Coming to the topic today, can we have the screen of the panelists? Coming to the topic today, we will talk about reconfiguring supply chains for the pandemic today. We have Arvind Kakru, who's a moderator also. Arvind Kakru, country head, end user and EPC business, Rockwell Automation. Our panelists are Srinivas Garimella, MD, Vega Conveyors and Automation. I think he's yet to join in. We have SPS Chauhan, Director, Asia and Middle East, Bastion Solutions, India. There's Rajiv Mehta, Chief Logistics Officer, Ambuja Cement. We have Jayendran Balasubramaniam, also known as JB, founder and CEO, Next First Engineering. And finally, we have Satyam Chaudhary, Senior Director, Flipkart. Arvind, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for a very nice introduction. And I would like to welcome all the panelists, my fellow panelists, for this discussion, and extend to them a very warm welcome. Before we deep dive, I just wanted to lay out a little bit of context, on the subject that we're going to be talking about. Now, as we all know, COVID-19 has given us a new dimension, overall, as far as supply chain is concerned. It has toppled the long-established business models of corporations and the governments across the globe that took decades to develop, And as nations are grappling with the pandemic and the pathogen, everything has come to a grinding halt, with a blink of an eye. The domino effects are contributing to the growing conviction that the world has slipped into a major recession. There are various scenarios and issues, that have resulted in reduced availability of goods and labor, restriction on movement of products, complete supply chain halts, and also issues related to tax, regulatory and reputational challenges. In the long term, these challenges will give rise to supply chain reorgs and further changes, and which would range from adoption of new channels like e-commerce to exploration of new technologies like blockchain, AI, etc. The reinvention process will require a much higher degree of leadership, from supply chain teams, than ever before. As they say in VUCA terminologies, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, they will be replaced by vision, understanding, courage, and adaptability. So in a sense, we had to go to VUCA 2.0 model, And then there are issues or technologies, and then adaptations, that are really going to be critical for us. For example, network agility, which is reacting quickly to disruption and utilizing most of the industry 4.0 tools to optimize the cost, improve the visibility across the network, and accelerate reaction times. Then digital collaboration, which is more related to the cloud chain-based supply chain applications and tools, and to apply automation and robotics to make supply chains more autonomous and ensure the business continuity. And then there is real-time network visibility, wherein companies can calibrate supply chain with forecast demand and compare the internal and the external data, and look at the real-time demand requirements. And then there are things like that, wherein we use technology as a major disruption or enabler, to kind of get a deeper understanding of interdependencies within supply chain. And as the world adopts to a very new normal, technology-led business models will emerge as more critical to avoid such disruptions in future. So we'll talk about some of these things in today's panel discussion. I would say the onus is on us to change the focus from surviving to thriving. So with that, I would possibly, start the discussion, and I would like the, first question to be addressed to Mr. Satyam Chaudhary, who's from Flipkart. Satyam, the question to you is, we know you are a, big company, and some of your schemes in the past, in the normal times, like big billion days and all, that used to be a big significant supply chain disruption, possibly in its own sense. How do you manage capacity, meet customer expectations, minimize complexities? These are the major challenges that you see. How do you really deal with these, right now?
Arvind, that's an excellent question. One of the biggest challenges that we have is to continuously try to keep our supply chain simple. If we talk about the selection that has been continuously improving as available on e-commerce platform, has just gone up in complexity in terms of material handling characteristics. If you look at the other dimension, which is in terms of scale of operation, that has continuously been going up, which brings its own set of complexity. And being a horizontal platform with deep penetration in niche segments of e-commerce creates its own set of complexity in terms of variable growth rates within the business units and variable demand uptakes, so on and so forth, as well as the fact that the demand response in the e-commerce is almost instantaneous to the environment. This comes in the form of that, any change in any external input can swing the demand in any part of the network for any segment of the selection without any notice, so to speak. So there are a couple of things that we have been pushing on. One part is the fungibility of the supply chain, so to speak, right? And that is, initially that was for us more as a response to evolving business need, but now it has become kind of a core principle for us in the design, in the drawing board itself, in the sense that how do we keep our supply chain assets as fungible as possible without losing sight of customer experience, without losing sight of affordability, right? So those that becomes the key construct. So essentially what that has led to us is try to break down the walls as much as possible within fulfillment center construct, for example, right? So we try to stay away as much as possible from specialized fulfillment centers that do only one small selection, serve just one small set of selection. Rather, we have taken a call to segment them more by the handling characteristics and the inventory characteristics and the demand characteristics than anything else, right? So those are the only three characteristics on the basis of which we do our segmentation now. And we are questioning those constructs going forward as well, that can this be simplified further, in essence, right? The second piece is also about the customer herself is also a source of complexity, part of it. Now, as an e-commerce platform, there is only so much we can do before we start conflicting with our value proposition as a supply chain on that construct, right? So that's where I think our biggest lever to push has been have a more granular understanding of the demand signal and supply capacity consumption. And with every, so to say, pressure situation, we have kind of moved a step further in understanding the nuances and incorporating them further, in the sense that every time we have a setback, we use that as an opportunity to start consuming it better. I'll take a very simple example in the construct, right? In one of our sales event, the larger parcels started getting shipped. I mean, the demand significantly went up, and we didn't understand as granularly the capacity consumption in the supply chain on that piece as a result. And that was a learning curve for us, right? So each such event then, in essence, the principle there has become that take much more granular view of the capacity from the customer point of view, part of it. And the third portion has been mostly on the quality of the infrastructure and the way we design the infrastructure for the wild swings, the 300 to 400% uptake that happens on throughput. How do we do that without breaking our productivity targets, or utilization targets, and so on and so forth? That has been the other piece of the learning.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks for your response. So I'll move on to Srinivas of Vega. Srinivas, I think your company has been into multiple, I would say, industries, but let me take an application within, which is like warehouse automation, that has been picking up pace in the recent past in the country. How do you think the customers are assessing the value of automation? Is it like the traditional models, in terms of reduction or efficiency increases, or something else? What is your perspective on how things are shaping up?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Arvind. In my standpoint, actually, customers or anybody should not automate just only for the sake of manpower reduction or operation efficiency. Those are the effects of automation. Because automation brings in reliability, productivity enhancement, consistency, predictability to all the businesses and operations. But that's a given. That is what is expected of automation. So we should expect something beyond that. Direct correlation is much easier to calculate because manpower cost reduction, the cost of error, all that can be directly calculated. And the ROI is can easily be tabulated. But I think when I talk about industry members plus the customers who pitch in for indirect correlation in terms of ROI that you can read. In my standpoint, customers should look at intangibles. When I talk about intangibles, I'm not talking about complex package handling, or I'm not talking about inventory visibility or reliability of service and end customer satisfaction. I'm looking at future-proofing one's own business. To take the example of Flipkart, what Mr. Satyan Chaudhary said, or Amazon, they need to invest in automation not because of ROI, but to simplify operations, because the nature of business is pretty complex. Their SKUs are humongous. They have half pallets, they have single parcels, single unit, multiple orders. So their business operations are complex to handle, so they need to automate. But if I take a regular warehousing companies, we're talking about medium scale, 2,000 crores, 3,000 crores, where in fact our Indian market can become bigger only if we start looking at 1,000 crore, 2,000 crore companies also automating for warehouses. Now there, it is not exactly a complex business calculation that set the tone for automation. They need to look at future-proofing their business in terms of triggering or catalyzing their sales and marketing people to think of marketing and selling the products which are not sold easily off the shelf, or which take a longer period to sell, or perhaps half pallets by giving more discounts and things like that. So that way they can reduce the ROI time period, not look at operational efficiency and look at business complexity solutions. I would want customers to think of automation for furthering their top lines, bottom line, have thoughts of how to increase sales by automating more than looking at business operation efficiencies. That's my take.
Sure. Thank you so much. So moving on, next question would be to Rajiv from Ambuja Cement. Rajiv, yours is a bit different, company, one of the largest as far as infrastructure is concerned. And a totally different dynamics. What do you think are some of the factors that play a critical role in bulk products supply chain? How is it different than what we talked so far?
So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Arvind. So I think if I talk about cement supply chain, the first and foremost point is agility. That volumes, they just swing like anything. If I give you one example, immediately after this COVID issue in April, we lost 80% volume in 1 month, and in the next month we were back to normal. So the difference was from 3 lakh ton to 20 lakh tons or 22 lakh tons overnight. So that is the fluctuation in the volumes. So the first and foremost thing is agility and how to make it sustainable. So that is the most important part of it. And second is that along with that, you have to remain focused on the cost part also in cement supply chain, because 20% of our supply chain gross revenue is consumed by supply chain cost. So you have to be very, very cautious that on one end you must be looking for improving your services, but at the same time, how do you remain focused on that part also? Because the total cost for, if I put LH India supply chain cost, it will be more than $1 billion US. So that makes another challenge. And the third most important factor is the technology part, that it is not implementation. We are going for best of the solutions, but the larger issue is the absorption part at the grassroots level. There lies a very big challenge, that how you ensure that whatever you are doing is being taken care at the grassroots level and people are understanding in right perspective. So these are the few challenges which we face in the bulk commodity business.
Sure. Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you very much. JB, moving on to you. I think your company is in a very unique position, combining integration of mechanical and automation and merging the both kind of technologies. You are primarily into material kinetics and advanced automation as well. And you have access to companies within India, outside India. What do you see? What is so unique about some of the solutions that you offer or your company offers?
Good afternoon, everybody. Arvind, thanks for the question. So I'm going to respond to your question, in three parts, all right? You use the word material kinetics, and this is a word that we are hearing all around us. And it's important for us to understand what that means, right? So, and for us to understand this, we may have to, kind of step back for a moment in history. See, traditionally, in all our experience as automation professionals, automation was something that was limited to manufacturing shop floors, whose primary promise was to help people make more of something, all right? A big macro trend that we are all seeing right now is, automation is getting out of manufacturing shop floors and is kind of permeating the entire chain from manufacturing to distribution to even point of sale or point of consumption, all right? So I think this trend of automation leaving manufacturing shop floors and getting into more complex environments is creating, a need for development of complex real-time systems in material handling rather than just simple conveyors that have pick-and-place devices on them. So material kinetics, in our understanding, is this science that helps people plan and study and plan material movement. I mean, so that's the material kinetics aspect of it. What does it mean, in a supply chain warehousing context, right? In the last few years, ERP systems and warehouse management systems, I think, have evolved greatly to enable very sophisticated, real-time, on-the-fly decision-making. Satyam spoke about, even Mr. Mehta spoke about, very, very sudden changes in demand, in the type of material that they were moving, right? So, this rise in online consumption, coupled with the ability to make real-time decisions, right, I think has broken down traditional imagery of supply chains, which was very linear, and actually built very complex, what I call supply networks, all right? In this context, material handling right now, the pressure on material handling is to keep up with this complexity, right? We heard complexity and agility multiple times over, in the panel so far. So, material handling has to now keep up with enabling very complex, sophisticated flow of materials in the real space to decisions that are being made in the information or the digital space. So, in some sense, it is, rise or resurgence of the mechanical engineers again. The third part of your question was advanced automation, right? This is again driven by the complexity. I mean, we keep hearing the words complexity and agility in the supply chain, right? And I mean, if you kind of double click zoom in, where rubber meets the road, what this means is a lot of variability in what these systems are expected to handle. I mean, they have to handle bulk, they have to handle pallets, they have to handle cases, split cases, and many times even eaches, right? So in this context, while throughput, and I think Mr. Srinivas put it very succinctly, he said it can't be just driven by manpower reduction or productivity increase anymore. All right. I mean, traditionally throughput was the be all and end all performance metric for an automation platform. I mean, today I think the metrics are getting more nuanced, right? I mean, things like order picking accuracy, real-time availability of flex capacity. I mean, how much flex headroom do I have? What is the on-time shipment accuracy? So there are lots of complex, nuanced metrics that are emerging. So in my opinion, advanced automation is basically a very innovative blend or an amalgamation of aspects across the information layer, the controls or the actuation layer, and the physical or the material movement layer. So that's, I think, what advanced automation means to warehousing and supply chain.
Sure, Javi, very well explained, All right, thank you so much, for the response. And I'll move to Mr. Chauhan from Bastion. Mr. Chauhan, I think your company specializes in integration, especially with respect to material handling solutions, etc. Now, looking at some of the emphasis that has been put up, from a safety point of view, how do you see it going, and what does what is your viewpoint there? Any highlights you want to share?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks, Mr. Arvind. So yes, as you see, and as I think other speakers have been alluding to, these material handling systems have come of age, and there's a lot of latest technologies and all which have come in, and as these new technologies come in, definitely the safeties also needs to be increased to that level. And if you see, it is because what is happening is many times or most of the times, all these products are put in companies which have worldwide presence and all, and it becomes very, very important for them not to have a negative feedback in the age of WhatsApp and all these things where the forwards are very, very fast. And more, everyone is focusing more on safety, and because when you have more automation and less number of people, and if something happens, God forbid, something happens to somebody, there are not enough people there, maybe or around them to take care of it. So inherent nature is we have to make these materials much more safer and better. Now, one of the examples I can just give is now you can see even in terms of robotics, where now cobots are coming in place, right? So where they can work hand in hand with the person behind them. Now, this was not, of course, available maybe 10 years back. There was nothing like that. It was a robot with a fence and everything, and then everything is taken care of. But now, because they have to work side by side, there has been advance in technologies. Same thing in terms of when you're going for cranes, when you're going for conveyors, there are a lot of factors which are getting inbuilt into it. And I would say today, yes, we are still not reached the ultimate because safety has different meaning to different companies. But most of the products that we sell, we source are very, very safe. And safety has to be inbuilt into the design of the system, not necessarily only the product. The product might be 100% safe, but the design might not be safe. So we have to look at the design of the system and make it more safer.
Sure.
That's it.
Thank you. So I'll ask the next question to Mr. Satyam again. And we have all seen how the warehouse industry kind of is expanding rapidly, etc. And there are a lot of expectations. The things are becoming more complex, and there are more numerous amenities available and stuff like that. How do you manage the cost and maintain inventory? What's your focus there? How do you manage these in terms of balance?
So the transformation of warehousing standards has been happening for quite a while in the industry. Part of it, if I remember correctly, the latest Knight Frank report that has been put out there in the domain now states that e-commerce is taking almost 24% of all the new grade A warehousing that is getting created in the industry, so to speak. Right? See, on one side, with grade A warehousing, as the infrastructure comes, certain costs that are associated with the quality of the infrastructure, the amenities and the facilities that come out with. But then it is also an opportunity to customize it for productivity, to customize it for the business needs part of it, right? From something as simple as the aspect ratio of the building, the length, breadth versus height, to the number of docks that much more suit where business wants to take its processes to. It's an opportunity to do that, and solutions like increasing the heights on the storage systems, ability to bring in more mechanization or automation, and so on and so forth. So it has to be, so the way we have come to look about it is look at it as more as a package deal, that yes, this platform as an infrastructure platform is a little more premium. We pay a little bit extra for it, but then it allows us to do a lot more efficient storage, a lot more efficient processing. It gives us the flexibility to ramp up, ramp down our capacity on demand. It allows us to deal with the mix change as the business grows, the selection mix change as the business grows, right? And those are the opportunities where you look at in order to more than offset the premium that you have to pay for, right? So the way we have come to look at it is think of it as a investment where you are raking in the ROI. We have made a choice for a grade A warehousing infrastructure, and that's the investment piece. And then there are intermediaries involved, be it in the storage systems, be it in the processing systems, mechanization, or just the pure as simple as the design aspects, where we have to extract that ROI, because that's the flexibility we are also getting with that infrastructure.
Sure. Thank you. Srinivas, your company is basically into system integration, right? You customize solutions and offer them very specific solutions, in your experience, have you encountered something very unique, that customer asked for, and then you provided a very unique solution, something that you can share with the audience?
Yeah. We have collaborated with a lot of customers over the years and given customized solutions, which included automating their manual operations. But I would like to bring to the table something different here in terms of being unique, and perhaps contrary to the answer I've given for your earlier question. I have a friend in Pune who runs a medium-scale 3PL center for autopiles. That's about 50-60 kilometers away from Pune. And being a medium-scale enterprise, he didn't want to spend that kind of money for automation, but did want to automate because he needed to harness or leverage this advantage of automation for reducing manpower, regular costs, operational efficiency, things like that. And our teams, when they studied and came up with low-cost automation using nature's gift, that's gravity. For his warehouse, we used a lot of mechanical sorters. We used gravity spirals, slide, chutes, gravity flow racks, low-cost dock levelers, mechanical counters, which not only cut the capex costs but also cut the opex costs. And he was thrilled about it because what is important is when you have your warehouse located 80 kilometers, 100 kilometers away from the main cities, getting talented people to run highly automatic lines also becomes a problem. So they look at low-cost automation. I'm coming from not an entrepreneur's perspective, but I would like to say something from an industry perspective. Most Western countries have gone through the route of mechanization before adopting automation. But in India, just like we missed the landline telephones and jumped to cell phones quickly, we seem to have jumped into automation mode and technology mode, mildly skipping mechanization. So here as an industry member, why I'm talking this is basically the panelist members here. All of us are into either medium scale technology or higher scale technology. But for the industry size to become bigger and for India to evolve as a market wherein we get into manufacturing of high-tech automation equipment or machine learning equipment, we need to have this pie larger. And this can be made by ensuring that not just the Flipkarts or Amazons of the world or other big FMCG players, but we also need to include the MSME sphere. We're talking about 500 crores, 1,000 crores, 2,000 crores, 3,000 crores industry also automating that. And that system integrators like us play a major role in ensuring that, because this is what happened to the IT world in the late 90s and it continued when the total ecosystem of IT was built and India, in the IT sphere became the world leader. Similar thing can happen in our automation industry, machine learning automation industry, provided we offer solutions to even the smaller companies. So we as an industry, together, we need to look at one spectrum is the greater technology areas that Flipkart and Amazon uses, that Jayendra is into WCS and things like that, or SPS Chauhanji offers from the Toyota solutions, and we offer from the Daifuku basket. We also need to look at mechanization automation to players who are far smaller, and this will ensure the pie is bigger and our sure-footedness in terms of having our industry going at 20% plus every year, next 20 years is sure. We could become, in fact, metal handling equipment, warehousing, automation could be the next IT in India, provided we look at that. Going forward, actually, it's going to be a very exciting journey for the supply chain domain and warehousing domain, and real revelation for years to come if we actually follow this norm. That's my take on it.
Sure. Thank you very much for your perspective. Rajiv, next question is for you. Cement manufacturing cannot be made sustainable, but how do you that correlate with or make supply chain sustainable? What are some of the strategies you deploy there?
Yeah, so I think the first and foremost is the technology part. See, supply chain, we have understood one thing, that I'll give you the complexity part, that with 40 manufacturing locations across the country and almost 1,000 distribution centers. So you have to ensure that everything moves in the right perspective. So the first challenge is that you have to have a right technology, and not as a status symbol, which should be understood by everybody. And I think we have to define very clearly that what are going to be the uses. See, technology for the sake of technology is not giving results. The second thing on which I will say, continuing the discussion which was happening with other panelists on the warehousing front and sustainability. In this business, I think least has been done as far as warehouse automation is concerned. Cement primarily is still across the country is being handled manually. And the most interesting part, I'll tell you, last 20 years, I am discussing with Indian Railways, discussing with other people. We are not having a single mechanized rail goods shed in the country as of now. Everything is being handled manually. So I think there is a major disconnect between the people who are in the business of automation and the users also. So I think a discussion is needed that what type of automation can be done for end-to-end service, like palletization. If you do palletization, it's fine. We can do it. But how to unload the pallets at the retailer level? They don't have forklifts, they don't have cranes. And how do you unload those pallets? What will be the reverse logistics? All those challenges are there. So the bigger issue is, for sustainable improvements, we need a strong collaboration between the people who are in the business of automation and the actual users. And looking at end-to-end supply chain, whether it can be a successful model or not.
Sure, pretty good. All right. JV, coming specifically to warehouse, and there has been a tremendous improvement, from a technology point of view, automation point of view. What's your view on, automation keeping pace with, what is happening over there in that industry, or some of the advancements that you see happening there?
Yeah, and I think, Arvind, you bring a very, very interesting way of asking the question, saying, how is automation going to keep pace? And we're all huffing and puffing because the industry is expecting us to transform ourselves much faster than what we have traditionally been able to do. And I think in answering your question, I would like to kind of compare and contrast what is driving the need for automation and what automation has to do to keep up with, right? So I think, the industry has been kind of going through a transformation in the past few years. So I'm saying the warehousing industry from an automation perspective. And I think the pandemic has just accelerated the pace at which this transformation has to happen. I mean, you in your opening comments referred to, VUCA 2.0, right? I mean, very recent surveys by large consulting organizations show that, there's almost a doubling in the outlook by warehouse operators with respect to their uptake of automation plans, purely from building resilience into their business. All right. So I think resilience is beginning to drive automation. And Satyam spoke about, how volumes have almost tripled. There's been a cliff event. I mean, a reverse cliff event of some sort. I mean, it took 2 months to almost take an industry that had taken 20 years to stabilize by 2x, right? So how do industries grow? And I think automation will be a very integral part of this, from the standpoint of getting more out of the existing set of resources. And finally, Mr. Srinivas made a very interesting observation about future proofing of business. I mean, if you look outside of the e-commerce industry momentarily, I think in the general supply chain industry, there is some kind of a merging of various layers of the supply chain. People are trying to do interesting ways of moving goods in the distribution network. Warehouses, which were traditionally called godowns, right, are now, I think, becoming, strategic assets. I mean, how can it unlock both top line and bottom line benefits? So I think these are all the industry trends that are driving the consumption of automation. If you were to now qualify what are the aspects that the automation has to deliver, keep pace with it, right? I believe that in the context of the transformation in the industry, new metrics will emerge with respect to what consumers of automation will use to drive their automation strategies. I think the three new metrics would be compactness. People would want to build smaller and smaller warehouses, come closer and closer to cities from a fulfillment perspective. So how compact are your solutions? The ability to handle a wide variety of items, so to speak. Satyam mentioned how their supply chain design is integrating various types of fulfillment strategies inside the same warehouse. So the ability to handle complex variety in item types and the ability to drive complex workflows. I think these will start becoming important metrics from a assessment standpoint, from an automation assessment standpoint. Omni-channel has become a very common word right now. People are going to try to leverage assets that they have across their spectrum to do things more efficiently. People will start, warehouses will be doing mixed pallet, full pallet, half pallet, a variety of things. So I think robotic case picking technology such as that will start becoming, more commonplace from an adoption standpoint. We are seeing industries globally aggressively pursuing micro fulfillment, store back fulfillment, dark stores as strategies to reduce the cost of logistics in their supply chain. So this will drive, the pressure to make smaller and smaller automations, so to speak. Complex material flows, complex workflows will become part of the overall supply chain strategy, supply network strategy. I think this industry, if I were to use an analogy, I mean, at the end of the day, is storing and retrieving items will go through the same transformation that the data storage industry went through. From sequential tape drives for storing and accessing data to highly randomized ways of storing and retrieving data. So we will see uptake of ASRS systems. We will see uptake of shuttle-based systems. We will see uptake of AGVs and AMR-based systems over and above the uptake of conveyorized systems. And finally, and I think, Mr. Chauhan made a very interesting point about safety. I think what we will also see is we will see the emergence of solutions that are more collaborative, more man plus machine combined in nature. I mean, whether we accept it or not, I think there are a few human characteristics that are tough to replicate or improve from a technology perspective. We humans are still, the fastest two-handed, vision-enabled, touch-enabled, intelligent, not artificial intelligent automaton in the world. So, technologies and solutions that kind of mix and match the best of man and machine, I feel will start getting accepted much faster than completely manless or lightless solutions. So that, Arvind, I think is my opinion on where the where the opportunities are in the warehousing industry from an automation perspective, and what the technology trends that we see are.
Sure, JB. I think you covered a lot in a short space of time. Pretty nice, and thanks for your inputs there. So, Mr. Chauhan, Bastion, also Vega, they have like external influences, and they also have access to other global markets, etc. My question to you is, the solutions that you offer globally, how are they different than in India? How is India keeping pace with some of the developments happening elsewhere in the world? Are there learning sharings? What is that you see from your own point of view and your own interfaces?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Irwin. So yes, if you ask me, in the last, I would say 7 years plus, India has gained, and it has gone much faster in terms of implementation of these processes, and products that have been around the world. What we sell there, we are almost selling everything of similar sorts in India, and of course in India at different levels. Not necessarily only e-commerce. E-commerce is definitely a big one, but in other manufacturing industries, 3PL, spare parts industries, all those, and FMCG, we are seeing the same. So there is the challenges, or 2-3 differences which I can just point out here would be: one is the scale of operations. Now, most of the times in India, we still don't see that scale of operations that you are seeing on the other parts of the world. So, of course, those technologies are still not there. The second I can see is in terms of each picking. I think JB also brought it out. Srinivas also brought it out. And each picking technologies are still in very, very nascent stage. We are still talking of, traditionally our supply chain has been like that. There are a lot of intermediaries in between the supply chain partners. And with the new supply chain, what we're talking about, where you want to reduce it and then minimize it so that you can optimize the cost, you are seeing that a lot of these eaches will have to be picked up by the likes of, just as example I'm giving, not to mention a specific industry, but like Unilever's and ITC and all, now instead of a case or something like that, now they're picking eaches. Now that is changing a lot, and those are some of the technologies which are still very, very expensive. So that's why it's not coming up too much in India. But yes, if the volumes are there, we are seeing some of them doing the same volumes. In addition to that, one thing which is very, very unique about India is, yes, we need to make these things work in India. They are very, very expensive, some of them. And how we can, really do like a balance between two technologies and merge them together and make something equivalent for India. And that has been seen, and it has been very, very successful in some of the locations that we have done. So that's my take on that.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for your response. So with that, I think we are at the end of the time, but I just wanted to kind of thank you all. It's been a pretty good discussion, and we got very different perspectives from all of you, from your experience, and we covered a lot of topics that are relevant, for us. And I think the debate will continue. I think a lot of people got some good ideas, based on the experiences that you shared. So thank you once again, and appreciate your time today. Over to you, Jayashree.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have a few questions. I'll just take one question.
Sure.
Can we, I mean, anybody could answer this. Can we expect the analytics requirement growth in conveying and material handling systems, which also do predictions regarding maintenance of asset and quality of products?
Good. I mean, so I think, thanks for, sending the question my way, Jayashree. I have experts in conveying in the panel, so please feel free to add to this, Srinivas and Chauhan. So I think in general, right, Jayashree, and this does not limit itself only to conveying. The world is going towards real-time decision-making using data, all right? And it's not one directional. It's not like data that you plan to do something and you're using data to just assess, are you in line with your original plan? So the PDCA cycle, coming from a manufacturing background, right? People want to run that real-time across how your capacity, across your throughputs, across, your inventory. So I think the real-time analytics component is very significant. And I think the entire, like Satyam spoke about standards in the warehousing industry, right? So I think the industry is also kind of layering itself from information flow and decision making. So I think analytics, I mean, if the question is from somebody who's trying to understand what the future of this is, I think the future for analytics in real-time decision making in shop floors is very, very high.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. There are more questions. What we will do is we'll send it across to you by email, and then maybe you could answer to the reader itself. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
We now have Lokesh Kaushal, Regional Segment Leader, Packaging Machinery, Asia Pacific, Rockwell Automation, speaking on digital engineering, remote support, and manufacturing smart machines.
Everyone, very good afternoon. So I hope that my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, Lokesh. Yes.
Yeah. So today I'll take you through the key trends in automation in warehousing, and it was a very good panel discussion wherein we highlighted different challenges. Satyam mentioned the need to go out of the standard constructs of fulfillment centers and going beyond over and above to meet the requirements out in the field, right? And thus really changing the way we are adopting technology today, right? So I'll take us through that, right? Now, if we look at the market today, we definitely see that workforce management is one of the key areas wherein the skill sets required and the amount of decision making required in the real time on the shop floors and warehouses is really high. That coupled with the availability of manpower in India, our key asset has been the human capital, right? And given the time and the situation we are in today, that is one of the assets which is highly stretched because of the SOPs we need to follow, as well as the migrant laborers going out. So that is an area wherein we need to see how we can cope up and make our systems future-proof, right? The growing middle class is fueling the growth, and the disposable income at hand is really what is helping us to grow in the market, right? From the direction of workforce and supply chains, right? They are highly stretched, and the growth rates are phenomenal given that everybody is shopping online, and the key preference is not to step out of the home until unless it is really required, right? Whereas from a industry perspective, the supply chains are becoming more and more global. Most of the products that we buy on e-retail channels, right, they are sourced from all over the world. And similarly for the products which are being manufactured in the manufacturing organizations, how do we see the point that managing these complex global supply chains under the current situations, as well as really going to a strategic inventory management and having a end-to-end visibility is one of the key areas which is required. And what we saw earlier, like Reliance in India, they are doing each and everything. But on a global phenomena, we are seeing more and more organizations are becoming focused onto their key areas. For example, Rockwell Automation, we spun off many of our functions to make sure that we are focused and we are working on industrial automation itself. And as a result, we are dependent upon many organizations outside our own enterprise for fulfillment of the needs. And that is where the connectivity and the data integration becomes important. Now, from a technology perspective, IT and OT availability and the technologies which are at disposal, they can be utilized in the workflows and warehouses to ensure error proofing, right? As well as aiding in quick decisions on the shop floor, and availability of uniform connectivity and computing resources really helps us to go forward and utilize these technologies so as we can make our systems and solutions more resilient and future-proof while maintaining the agility. what we are seeing is, and JB touched upon this briefly during the session, that automation is really evolving from a single type, high quantity, fixed automation to a highly flexible batch size of one kind of systems, right? Wherein instead of having different changeovers being done while manufacturing the products, when I look at supply chains and warehousing, each product being handled is different. Right? How do you make that flexibility in the systems to take care of it? When we look at single uniform pieces, robotic systems have been providing flexibility on the shop floors. And Mr. Chauhan touched upon collaborative systems which can work together with humans, right? But how do we take that and address the randomness in material handling requirement on the warehousing side? That is where independent cart technology really comes in to play. You can utilize it in conjunction with robotics and collaborative systems so as you have systems which are configurable on the fly and have individually addressable actions. And thus, you really come up with a system that provides you an end-to-end flexibility while ensuring that you get higher throughput and configurability in the systems. In order to get into more detail, let's look at a traditional conveyor-based system versus an independent cart-based solution, right? The traditional conveyor-based systems had fixed paths. Now, if you see the two red dots on the conveyor-based system, there are, let's say, operations to be performed here, but you'll have to wait till the product moves from the entire path, and thus it allows for only sequential access. As well as the mechanical constraints in the system ensures that we can run at only X amount of potential of the overall system. The slowest the slowest station slows down the entire system. Whereas now you look at the bottom part of the screen, wherein you see that there is a matrix type of system that is built together. Now, with the beauty of each of the carts disconnected from each other, and they are free to move on the matrix from station A to station B, depending upon what the operations are to be performed. And addressing the point of sortation and fulfillment, this really comes in handy. So now moving from red dot A to red dot B, you can move through entire network. Instead of doing that, you can simply choose a shorter path and thus have a better efficiency of the system. And given the scenario in warehousing, wherein you have got to randomly access the products and solutions from pick point to the place point or the final output, this really provides you with the capabilities to have and work these systems on the fly. Okay. So as a takeaway message, it provides us with unprecedented flexibility while reducing mechanical complexity of the systems and providing with higher throughput. Looking at some of the key values, it helps us achieve higher throughput, reduce the overall footprint, because now I'm not limited by the traditional constructs of a sortation system. I could scale it up. I could utilize the vertical direction in the systems and thus have a smaller footprint while ensuring that I am able to achieve a throughput which is able to handle different requirements. Optimized system design, as well as you only need to operate the areas and the power is consumed only when the mover moves there. So in case you're utilizing your system at a lower efficiency outside of the peak areas or at a lower requirements, you're not burning out fuel unnecessarily to run the entire system. And that is also one of the key advantages. Now, all this is pretty exciting, but when we talk about the warehousing systems, they are inherently complex, right? And the requirement of n number of variables to be addressed really makes that simulation complex. So how do we really go about evaluating the designs? That is where digital engineering comes in handy, right? Apologies for that. What you can do is, for all these highly complex systems, you can demonstrate the concept, really transfer your CAD systems into a design and simulation software, provide it with the limitations that you have in the real-time processes, and it can help you analyze the throughput, identify system bottlenecks, and thus give you a system which is foolproof, and you do the required amount of engineering upfront. What you see on the top side video is a simulation of one of the EV battery assembly systems, right? And on the bottom side, you're seeing that real machine in action. So that is how you are able to really design and reduce your iteration risks while you're out in the field. And last but not the least, I like to leave you all with the message of the connected supply chain. As we see in an end-to-end supply chain, the material flows from the raw material processing happens in the manufacturing space, and then it is transported to various distribution channels. And as I believe JP mentioned, that supply chains are becoming more and more complex, because even for a raw material coming into a manufacturing process, it might be processed separately in different environments. For example, the packaging material is coming from a different source, the materials are coming from a different source, right? And thus these highly complex supply networks really can only be efficient if there's a direct information flow end to end. Thus, your suppliers can optimize on your demand patterns as well as your production scheduling, and providing you a full visibility over the end-to-end distribution networks, right? And that way you can gain an overall efficient supply chain where you can take quick decisions based on real-time visibility of information. With that, I'll close the session for today. Any questions, Jason?
Thank you so much. We have a couple of poll questions. Can we have the poll questions, please? Is ever-growing number of product types challenging your system performance? We would like everyone to vote, even the panelists. Could you have the results, the poll results? So over 89% people say yes.
So Jayshree, with that, I'll say is that is a perfect case to reevaluate the existing systems that they have, as well as the upcoming concepts, right? So as you can plan for the variabilities that are challenging your performance today, and accordingly take care of the forthcoming needs and really make your systems future-proof.
Yes. Thank you, Lokesh. Could we have the second poll question, please? Do you plan to utilize digital engineering for solution validation? If everybody has voted, then maybe we could have the results. Okay, so 69% say yes.
Wow, that really echoes the sentiment, Jayshree, over here.
So Lokesh, that spells good news for you, right?
I believe yes is the answer, and people who are interested, they can we can connect with them back.
Yes,
and
sure.
take things forward. Right.
Sure. So thank you so much, Lokesh. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We move on to our next panel discussion for the day. It's about making supply chains more transparent than ever before. Our moderator here is Sriram Parmanand, India Business Manager, Architecture and Software, Rockwell Automation. We have Sangeet Kumar, CEO and co-founder, Adverb Technologies. We have Ram Somtia, Head Supply Chain, Reliance Retail. And we have Senthil Kumar KK, National Manager, Supply Chain Transformation, Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you. Over to you, Sriram.
Thank you, Jayshree, and good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon to the panelists. So far we've been, it's been a good session so far for me, and I'm sure that everyone on the participants are also gaining a lot of inputs. So what we heard from the first set of panelists, plus what Lokesh said, there were some key themes which kind of resonated with me. So one was obviously that the benefits of automation was kind of given, which is what Mr. Srinivas also started. There were some points around the need for future proofing. Then specifically for the industry, the warehousing industry, what came out was the revalidation that complexity and agility and the variability which is required, that's increasing multifolds. The good part is that this particular industry is something where there's a growing demand because it is serving something which is, actually helping the cause at this current situation where we have, various kinds of restrictions and lockdowns, etc. So the topic that we would talk here is that supply chain transparency. So this requires, companies to know what's happening upstream, as well as how to communicate this knowledge across the ecosystem. The way Lokesh mentioned, end to end, and so kind of a supply chain network. Like rightly pointed out by the earlier panel, it's not just productivity that this is going to be focusing on. Supply chain transparency today also, is driven by regulatory requirements as much as by, customer expectations being much higher and more demanding. It's not easily achieved, but it requires a sound foundation and continuous improvement. So I'm going to take the benefit of my panelists, to navigate us through this particular part. So Sangeet, I would start with you. Sangeet is joining us from Adverb. You've been in the process automation as well as material handling business for over 2 decades. I see that you also have the benefit of setting up some highly automated factories as well as warehouses, including your stint at Asian Paints. And now that you're at Adverb, you're right in the thick of things. So my question to you would be that, there's fierce competition and thin margins, which are wearing out profitability. So how do you work closely with partners to ensure that, you're meeting the targets?
Okay. Hi, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you again for me being or inviting me in this panel discussion. Hopefully, I'll be able to add some value to the listeners. So, as far as this is a very relevant question in today's arena, and even more so because of COVID. So, if you see, okay, even when I was working for Asian Paints or when I have left Asian Paints and I have been working for Adverb for the last 4 years, the key to this whole thing, how can we work with our partners or customers to create real value? So the key is how well we understand their processes and systems. What is their requirement? And because we know similar systems, which is being used by similar companies or industry, which is very similar in operation as far as warehouse is concerned, how can we bring that insight to the table? But the key is how well we understand their process, product, systems, etc. So the discover phase, we follow this 4D approach: discover, design, and deliver, and dedicated support. So discover phase is very, very important. The other phase is we need to build optimal systems. Not automation should not be for the sake of automation or for showing it to the world. It should be giving value to the end user or the customer, and he should get benefited. So optimal automation is the key, and that so if and we have experienced it multiple times when we discuss with our customers. Sometimes they move away and they start automating every operation, 100% of the operation or 100% of. The moment we try to do it, the automation becomes very, very costly and it starts hitting you, and then you take a decision not to go with this. So optimal automation is the key. Now, automation in many cases, and in warehouse particularly, as you were rightly saying, it is not only about improving the productivity of people and therefore gaining efficiency. It is also how efficiently I am able to use space. And many a times in our experience, what we have seen is the use of cubic space and the amount of money which you save in land and the civil costs associated with building the land funds your automation for other things as well. So we have to see everything in a totalistic manner. So it is the space utilization, it is the losses which happens because of rework. Many a times we don't even it has come out or it has ingrained into the system in such a way that we don't even consider it a rework now, and like counting at the dispatch area. Now that is a rework. Some work has been done and you are checking it, and you are twice checking it or thrice checking it, and so that is a rework. So those kinds of rework, if we eliminate, we get a very fruitful thing. And this is what and these optimal automation, what benefits, whether it is justifying the ROI and the productivity gain, not only in terms of throughput or let us say picks per person per hour, etc., but also in the current situation, how many people you can have to run the operation. So these are important things, and this is what we do to make sure that the customer gains, and even if with his thin margin he is actually able to save money or warehousing cost, and therefore which funds the automation.
Thanks, Sangeet. I think that was a useful insight on how one can approach this. So I would come to Mr. Senthil. So you're from Hindustan Coca-Cola, the brand that everyone knows, and what comes to mind is the high volume of products that your factories handle on a daily basis. What I understand is probably one crate means something like 12,000 bottles of Coke, something like that, one pallet I would mean, which will mean that there's a high amount of distribution network and related work that goes on, which obviously again rings the bell that there's a high amount of complexity in entire supply chain. So my question to you is, much of the road and rail is used in logistics. So considering that demand from rural areas has been increasing, how do you spruce up your supply chain to meet this demand quickly?
Yeah, very important and challenging question for us as well. Much of the growth potential currently it is in the rural market, while national highways is developing the roads at a rate of say slightly over 30 kilometers per day. And we also lack a lot in the logistics development as such. We don't have infra like detachable trailers, which is quite common in other areas where I can go leave the consignment there, move the prime mover out, and then increase my loadability or turnaround time. So those are also the challenges we have. But the key strategy to serve the rural market currently that we have is like twofold. One is the urban spoke model, which is proven, and we appoint the big distributor in a rural area, and he helps cater to a couple of spokes around him. That is a key strategy we need to adopt, and we have been successful in doing so in the rural market. The other one we are also piloting is the route to agent. So we appoint an agent for specific lanes or sections of the rural market, where these agents will collect the stock from the prime distributor, and they help in distributing this to the retail outlets. So while we are seeing some positive side with respect to the standardization of truck sizes coming up, there are a couple of more years for us to get to a stage where our rural market infra is completely developed for us to cater. But big success for us would be like, though we are an pan-India organization, our factories are also widely spread, right all the way from the northeast corner to the south end. So in that way, at least we have our next distribution touch point closer to the factory, and that is helping us as well.
True. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Senthil. So Brigadier Somtia, first of all, I would take this opportunity to thank you for the services that you have given to the nation. Thank you so much. So now you've been heading the supply chain close to a decade now with Reliance Retail, and with Reliance Retail expanding rapidly with the recent rollout of JioMart, I think the supply chain department is going to be busier than ever and very, very critical to the business expansion. So my question to you would be, managing capacity, meeting customer expectations, and minimizing complexities are going to be main challenges in this particular part. How do you deal with all of these?
Well, good afternoon to Sriram and of course everybody. I was initially very hesitant to join this. When Jayashree called me up, I said, technology mujhe aati nahi hai. When I will meet Senthil or Sriram or Sangeet, they are all they are all engineers. Mero technology ki spelling bhi nahi aati, how it is going to be a difficult job for me to speak on. But good, you made my job a little easy by saying that, okay, let me talk about JioMart or something that we are going through. Pardon me for my lack of technical knowledge. That's an area where I continue to still ask my team to switch on my computer. Okay. There are three things that you are very clearly asking. That is the capacity building. That's one part, and of course, ever increasing the customer expectation. And then, of course, we want to counter that. On top of that, and there's so much happening in these two aspects. How do we ensure that your operation still remains simple? How do you minimize the complexity of your operations? So I would, rather than talking about the theoretical knowledge, let me talk about what we are going through. Grocery across the world, especially in India, we know that grocery, as far as retail business, the modern retail is concerned, is only 3%. Rest of even the developed world is only 15%. There are still those mom and pop the shops from where the people go and buy their everyday requirements. And on top of that, 3% is the overall modern grocery, modern retail is a grocery. We talk about JioMart is about grocery online. Why is it that the fashion and lifestyle or the consumer durables, where it's more than 50%, which has already been converted into e-com, and modern retail and largely now into e-com, you find the grocery has been really lagging for the simple reason. When you look at the volume, massive. When you look at the number of products, if you go to a Reliance Fresh store, it's about 4,000 articles. If you go to a Reliance Smart store, it's about 10,000 different types of articles you want. And then we are Indians. If you go to a store in Coimbatore, there's a store, it would have nothing about 1,000 types of spices. But every family wants to have its own taste of dal. So that's one part of grocery, and then we move on to the other part, which is your fruits and vegetables. Impossible, because when you harvest it and then you to deliver it and you to still maintain that freshness of fruits and vegetables, it's an impossible task. But in that kind of a scenario, Reliance has decided to launch JioMart, and I would say yes. When we talk about capacities, I will not talk about all the capacity, because it's about the platform, it's about the order fulfillment strategy, it's about many things. I would restrict myself only to the back end, the supply chain. Actually, you will need more warehouses. You will need warehouses which handle different categories of merchandise, because that would be decided based on the velocity of each of the article. You would not like to keep 10,000 articles because we all know it's going to be only a handful of those articles which will handle about 20% of the article, which will have about 60% of your value. So, for sure, how have we gone about doing that, building that capacity? Naturally, we have our own warehouses. We had planned a few things, and the best thing that what we are liking, and something that we are now exposed for last few months, is that we have 3PL vendors who are more than willing to work with you to build your capacity. And they are ready to operate warehouses where you can go and you would sign a contract, have your SLAs in place, they are willing to do. Yes, you need teams, of course. You need teams to be trained. The beauty about all this is, unlike my army life, where I spent bulk of my life, have more than 31 years, the good thing I like about here, because it's all automated, but bulk of the things, the processes are so beautiful. It's is that it becomes much easier for you to train your teams. You develop a cadre, you train your teams, you work out a pilot, and you have your processes, and then you train your people, and it doesn't take very long for you to do that. So replication is absolutely possible. You build a capacity in terms of warehouses, in terms of infra. 7 years back, I'm sorry, I may be taking too long. I'm sorry, I think. Okay. So infra, I think 7 years back, there were possibly 2-3 manufacturers of MHEs today in India, and everything used to be imported. Today in India, you have 10 different manufacturers of the MHEs, and they have the stocks available in India. Earlier, they used to import all this. So you have to tie up all this, and it's possible for you to develop that capacity. Moving on to the customer expectations, we all know. If I were to use my own example, when I place an order for grocery in my own business, I'm waiting when it will be delivered. Are all the items that require, is it available or not available? Is every item that I have, is it in a good state? What about the fruits and vegetables? So there are 100 things. Can I return something? What about my refund? We know all this expectation. Today I place an order. I want that order to be delivered today itself. And this is a maddening thing. It's absolutely a maddening thing when we thousands of orders. And of course, we all know that during the AGM we did about. We can do lakhs of orders a day, and it's over a period of last few weeks only that we have been able to build a business like this. So those are the expectations. How do we make it simple? Make it simple I also give the solution in terms of 3PL, in terms of working with your 3PL vendors, working your people who will supply you the infra. And the other good thing, the big change in India that has come about, which I have witnessed, is that earlier used to be what we call as godowns. Few years back used to be called, the concept was more of godowns and a configuration of a warehouse with a much lower ceiling height. Floor was bad, things were difficult. No, today India has learned across the country. It's not 100%, 70-80% across the regions. I can name a few states where it's still a challenge. Otherwise, people today, the kind of warehouses, I think there are global standards which are available. So those are the things which are happening. The solutions are there in place. The people and India, the manpower is not a problem. Yeah, what would be going forward? Yes. Automation in terms of how do we simplify all these processes? How do we build larger and larger teams? Those are going to be the challenges. So I would say during a rapid growth or what we are witnessing, yes, it's going to be a challenge. It's expected to be a challenge because this kind of a growth is unprecedented. But once things settle down, yes, I do not see any problem. We will be able to manage this. Thank you.
Yes, and I guess Reliance has the reputation of really the ability to ramp up and ramp up like no one else can. So yes, we are sure that that would scale up. But that brings up an interesting point that you also mentioned about ramping up, but you also mentioned about how it can get leaner. So I'll just take this question to Mr. Sangeet. So Sangeet, more global players are exploring automation solutions. So, as to eliminate distribution layers and talk about lean distribution is what they're looking for. How can more FMCG companies in India consider this?
Hey, I'll try to answer this question. You spoke about global players, but I would just say add one more thing to this. It is not only global players, but all those players which has a scale of operation or volume of operation, and mostly you'll not believe, mostly it is Indian companies which are taking the first step because they have reached that scale. Okay, there are multinationals like Unilever and others who are investing heavily, but it is also the Indian companies which are taking the step because they understand if they have to manage the scale effectively, efficiently, then they have to embrace automation. Now, coming to the FMCG companies in particular, and we just heard about how grocery is changing in India. And so earlier 5 years, 10 years back, it was the car. And so all the manufacturers used to push sales of cartons to their kirana store. So even if it is, let us say, soap or shampoo, etc., etc., because that was more efficient for the manufacturer to send the complete carton. When they found that, okay, there is a push from kirana store that they would not like to, because they don't kirana stores, unlike Reliance, which is having 4,000 SKUs, they also have 600 to 800 SKUs, and from various manufacturers. If they keep one carton each of these SKUs, they have to keep 600, 800 carton, which is not possible. So what they started doing, all the FMCG companies, is they asked distributors to break the cases and then provide it to the end customer. Now, in this process, what happened is one manufacturer for one city, which is having more than 1 million population, they have at least 10 distributors, 12 distributors. Now, each distributor has his own warehouse or his form of warehouse, which is nothing but a two-story building or a 3-story building or a godown, which was being talked about. Now, this is complete maldistribution of inventory. You are placing the inventory at multiple places. Second, the operation cost in each of these warehouses, these are warehouses, whatever we say, distributor ko de diya ya jo bhi, but these are real warehouses, and people are doing exactly the same thing which happens in big warehouses, which is inward, outward, break casing. For the customer, they are packaging, etc., labeling. So now, this is complete inefficient way of doing, and there are many companies which has realized this, and what they are saying is, okay, distributors, great, you do the sales, you keep on serving the customer, but the warehouse part, the management of the warehouse, let it be done by me, so that there is no maldistribution of where there is and to do that now, because it is eaches or items, and that is what e-commerce has done to India. Even the kirana stores is asking one shampoo, one shampoo, which is usually it is a lorry of shampoo. So that is what is the expectation, and that is why lot of FMCG companies are automating their warehouses to and these are manufacturing companies which has to compete with e-commerce distribution and big retail distribution. Therefore, they are bringing these warehouses back, the distributor warehouses, to their mother warehouse, automating their mother warehouse, making the whole thing lean, making it less number of touches to reach the end customer, so that it reaches efficiently, and in the process are gaining better, are able to serve their customer, gaining in terms of money they are saving in terms of distribution cost, as well as is able to serve the customer. It is not when kirana store is giving an order, you deliver it on the 3rd day or a 4th day or a 2nd day. Today they expect it in 4 hours, 3 hours, and that is possible only when you bring everything to the manufacturer's warehouse and automate it so that you serve him in 4 hours or 6 hours. This is what is happening, and there are a few companies which is leading this whole revolution, and there are many companies which are talking about replicating it. And believe me, it is all, not only global companies, but all those companies, the Indian FMCGs, they are going that step further to manage the scale.
Thank you. And I guess it makes sense as well, because the way we order, in packs of one when we are buying from from online, I guess that's what is moving backwards, that kiranas, or as you call it, when they buy, they also want to have the luxury of that flexibility in terms of, just getting what they want in the pack sizes and obviously in quick time. So thanks, Sangeet, for that. So I'll come to you, Mr. Senthil. In one of the earlier panel discussions, I just noted down, Mr. Rajiv mentioned that nearly 20% of the cost they were accruing to the supply chain related cost. I believe with the scale of operations that you have, there would be a good amount of this part, or the logistics cost being a big chunk of the outlay. So over the last couple of years, what would be some of the steps that you have taken to reduce this?
Yes, so as you mentioned, yes, logistics is a big chunk of money for our business as well. And we were doing or taking some strategical steps last couple of years, like what Sangeet was saying. So automation is one key, but even before getting into automation, we took a strategy call of doing palletized shipments. So most of our shipments used to be manual loads. Those cases has to be manually loaded on these trucks and pushed out. In a way, we had a good amount of TAT, I would say, on the docks. So docks are completely occupied because of this. And slowly we migrated to palletization. And today we are close to 70% and heading towards 90% in the next 1.5 years. So this really helped us to bridge the scale, be more agile, and also bring in the cost levers. Yes, we had impacts or challenges in the initial days when we migrated to palletization. The loadability, there is a number of cases that I can load on the trucks were less compared to manual. But we took this conscious call to scale up, as well as we know what all the things that we need to play around to improve this. So we now have some standardization on the trucks, not to the great extent, but yes, with the new notification, we are very happy that we should quickly get there, and that will help us to further improve our loadability. We were able to make lots of modifications or improvement in our operations on the manufacturing lines also to help us leverage that loadability that we were getting. The other key aspect was automation. The key is like how I can reduce my overall turnaround time. So the controllable area is within my docks. The time it takes for my truck to enter in all the way up to it goes out. So what all the things that I can automate, both on the infra angle as well as on the process angle. So with respect to having an dock management system, auto loading docks, or storage retrieval system. So these are all some of the infra related piece, as well as going into RPAs, digital signatures. These are all process automations. We were able to bring in a good amount of improvement on our turnaround times on premise. Plus, we have a control tower that manages the turnaround time on en route to the customers and also at the customers. And our planning system on the logistics transportation, which helps us to understand what's the most ideal time I should ship to reach to a customer, where you will be able to quickly offload and send my truck back. So the detention at the customer standpoint is also optimized to great extent. As Sangeet was mentioning, zero touch is a key motto. So how do we get there? To reduce the number of touches, the end-to-end supply chain, that's the key for us to get there to at the reduced cost with increased quality. So my product gets to the consumer at the safest point. So we are working on it. But so far, these are the key initiatives I would like to bring in that we are able to make this change happen.
Sure. Good to know that. Thank you, Senthil. So Brigadier Somtia, Sangeet mentioned that the warehouses or godowns or warehouses, what we are calling, it's not just the globals but even Indian companies. There's a lot of there's a facelift or a change that's happening. So with warehouses becoming grade A and numerous amenities which are coming in, so how do you manage cost and maintaining inventory?
I'll give the example of defense services. When you buy an equipment, India has bought Rafales. If India has bought Rafales, India must plan as to how does it propose to use these Rafales for next, say, 20, 30 years. When you look at the cost of something, it has to be a life cycle concept rather than what you have purchased off the shelf or you ask somebody to manufacture and give it to you. I would use the same example here for a warehouse also. I had a supply chain where I got warehouses which are 50-year-old also, and warehouse which is today ultra modern globally, as good as anything available globally. And when you use these old warehouses or the, I think it's time for us as a country, and we have moved. Let me also say, I think I shared that earlier, and we have really moved a long distance in that journey. The cost is okay. Initially, that's a cost, but I won't call it a cost. The right term for that would be investment. That's an investment you make in a warehouse. Earlier, a warehouse, if you made it a grade A, you ensured that you created a much larger cubic capacity also. Earlier, we used to have only G+3, G+4 configuration. Today, all our warehouses, I think there is hardly anybody who's constructing a good warehouse which is G+6 and maybe higher than G+6. When it makes sense, we are going in for that kind of configuration. Look at thereafter and all those aspects, whether it's when you look at the ceiling height, whether you look at the way your merchandise is going to flow, look at the efficiency, look at the storage that you are going to create, look at the way number of docks that you would need, all this. When you invest in all these aspects to ensure that all that extra cost that you invest initially is more than compensated subsequently as you're going to use it for years and decades altogether. When we talk of amenities, in terms of amenities, of course, which are required, of course, that's an initial investment that will be made. But I think gradually we have to move. I'll give an example here in fruits and vegetables, what we call as CPC, Central Processing Units, where we handle these CPCs. And the automation is it's a comparatively very simple operations, but we want to automate even that also, because we cannot afford to induct a large number of people, because again we have across the country at many places we will have these unions and other issues. You want to move away, you want to handle larger inventory, you want to handle it rapidly, and you want to handle it has to be absolutely accurately. In such areas, you need to have warehouses which can address all these aspects. So it's absolutely, I would say, cost. Initially, there's going to be a cost, but as we start using it, or whether it's a repair and maintenance, or the productivity of the people, or your other things, or the amount of throughput that you will be able to handle from the same warehouse, that will be easily compensate within a few years all that extra cost that you invested. And hence, it makes sense for us to continue and look at the land. And today, how much land is available today? If you have to invest, it makes sense for us to go in for a vertical dimension, which makes so much of sense for everywhere. So that's my way of looking at the entire thing. Thank you.
Sure, I think that makes sense. Looking at the total cost of ownership, or the cost over a life cycle, rather than just the acquisition cost or restrictions around the acquisition cost itself, makes sense. So I think we are quite on time as well, and we got a lot of interesting insights, and thanks for sharing the experiences that all of you have brought to the table. I thank all the panelists for taking out time, and Jayashree, I bring in you now. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Sriram. Thank you, Mr. Somtia. Thank you, Sangeet, and thank you, Senthil. Thank you so much. We have one question that sounds very interesting. I would like anyone to answer it. About the sustainability initiatives being taken by organizations in the context of supply chain. What I mean, most probably, I think Ram and Senthil would be right person to answer this. But what are the sustainability initiatives that you take? Sangeet, you can tell us about how you think organizations should work at this?
Yeah, so many organizations today are also looking after, so what is the amount of kilowatt hour or unit per carton that they are spending, and that is one critical thing which people are doing in terms of sustainability initiative. The other thing which is being forced is the packaging which is getting used, and most maybe because of law, or maybe because there are many companies which are progressive in nature. So they are moving away from plastic or non-destructible plastic and moving towards, so in some cases paper, in some cases reusable plastic, where earlier it was never heard of is that crates goes to a kirana store and then it comes back. But we are seeing lot many things happening. These are reusable things. You don't need to have a carton packed and then shrink wrapped and then it goes to the kirana store and come back. The third thing which many companies, and sir was saying about the good quality warehouses that are getting built. And in these good quality warehouses, many people are using solar rooftop to give energy and power to the automation, as well as to the lighting needs with battery, of course, as a backup. So these are few of the initiatives which companies are taking in the warehouse space to make their complete supply chain. Supply chain is a big thing. Warehouse is a part of that big thing, where people are trying to make it more sustainable.
Senthil, can I ask you the same question? I mean, I'm sure, who else would know it better than you?
So I was answering it in two parts. One is as an organization on the manufacturing, as an overall HCCB as an organization.
No, you're talking about the solar initiatives that you're taken at your logistics.
Sorry. Yes, and then the second part is on solar. We also look at all the energy initiative opportunities that we have with respect to monitoring the consumptions versus the performance on a real-time basis, so that we tap all the inefficiencies right from the utilities that we generate. And I was talking about the biodiesel, which we are also piloting in a couple of locations. So there are various initiatives to be more sustainable, both on the environment aspect as well as on the technology aspect.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you so much. So we have more questions that have come from the audience. We will mail it across to you later on at a later date, and then maybe we could reply to our audience. Thank you again. Thank you. Okay, if we now come to the tail end of our webinar, we have a presentation from Manas K. Basu, Commercial Manager, Services and Solutions, Rockwell Automation.
First of all, good afternoon to everyone, and thanks the panelists to set the stage for me. I will run you through a small, thought that Rockwell is perceived to our approach, that how we can build or how we can help to build the smart supply chain operation with the different users that we talked about or we got interacted with. That once we see that the importance of the information exchange from every point of the value chain, starting from the consumer to the raw material, right? So it is very important now that all the stakeholders has to be connected on a digital thread. So it requires to connect to each other so that they can exchange information, which is critical in terms of making sure that the supply chain, the expected performance is actually achieved. Now, once we talk about that, that several stuff comes in our mind, right? And we hear many things in the industry, like the Internet of Things, the digital transformation, smart warehousing, and so many things. But from a user standpoint, I think this is some way, make people, make people, or I will say that it does not allow a user to select that where or which dimension do I make investment so that I can expect or I can get the expected outcome. So Rockwell talks about a systematic approach of making these things implemented, and we should have a very, very a clear-cut approach that how we are actually going to adopt technology or adopt the technology piece in our operation, right? So we discussed about the automation of infrastructure. We talked about the life cycle coverage. So many stuff we discussed, right? So we should have a systematic approach how we should adopt the technology in our daily operation. Otherwise, it will be really confusing, and maybe there will be a lot of point solutions. We will be starting using it, and then end of the day without getting the expected result. The way Rockwell thinks in this, we have a two-dimension approach. One is obviously the technology piece, and obviously the second one is how we implement technology. That means what is our approach, or what is our the implementation or deployment methods or adaptation method of a technology in specific industry. So if we talk about technology, yes, obviously, we talked about automation. So there are many stuff need to be automated. As we talk about a smart warehouse, we talked about a smart docking system. We talked about entire, the material movement stuff, robotics, and Lokesh talk about the ICT. So these all comes in a layer where it is, which we say it's an intelligent packaged power and the automation and process control layer, which is basically the core control stuff which actually controls our equipment, which controls the each equipment that we are having. It can be a ASRS system, it can be a conveying system, it can be a loading unloading stuffs. So that comes in that, and in the next layer, the second level of technology comes is that how we simulate the complete operation of a warehouse or a fulfillment center or a complete supply chain, which makes or which help us to identify which is the best way of operating the things to get the maximum outcome out of it. So we say it's a simulation mechanism and simulation platform where you can actually do the multiple simulation of multiple modes and multiple models of the control, and then you can get the best out of it. And then we also talked about a closed loop analytics, which is also very much relevant for today's environment, because there are so many variants that people are using. I heard someone talking about a velocity of the material and the type of material, the way you will fulfill the fulfillment center. So you need to have a analytics to understand the profile of a specific product or specific age group or specific time of the year, that when which material moves first, and you have to make sure that those fulfillment is done rightly. At the same time, you have to also have an idea or have a control that which material has to be stored, how we can store a material so efficiently so that it can be moved much faster, and also we can utilize our capacity much efficiently. And on top of that, there is another layer, which is the MES applications, which is more of managing the complete warehouse operation in terms of the smart warehouse and the smart decision-making process. And also we can talk about the visibility across the supply chain, where all the stakeholder or all the piece of the information are visible on a one common platform. Right. So this is all about the technology piece, which we can or we are offering, which actually help a smart the supply chain operation can be made. And next piece is that how we are going to deploy it. So the technology is there. But what is our readiness to deploy that technology? Whether we are ready today to adopt that level of technology. So you need to have a maturity index that has to be identified, and we have to see that where today we are and where we want to go, and in the journey, what are the level or whatever the path that we need to cross, right? So we normally in Rockwell, approach, we normally talk about a control readiness, operation management readiness, and the foundation OT infrastructure, right? So the first is the control readiness. So whether we are, what is the control level today we are, whether we are in a manual control, we are automated, condition-based, or information-driven. So what is the layer we are? So every layer, the transition from one layer to another layer, there is adaptation of technology or the basic automation or the infrastructure which is required. So that can be proposed, or that can be adopted. The second thing is from the operation management side also, that where we are today, whether we are in a bespoke solution, whether we have got a standalone solution, or we have got a platform-driven approach, or we have got a predictive and intelligent operation that we have. So these are basically the maturity scale. So you have to first decide, or we have to first do the assessment that what is the current scenario, what is the current state we are, and then what is our end destination, and then we can take a phase wise or the step by step approach to reach to the next level and to reach our ultimate goal. But obviously, whatever we do on the control readiness and the operation management stuff, but at the same time, we need to have a strong foundation infrastructure of the converged network, then automation and the basic automation and control, and obviously the proper network security and the cyber security approaches. So once you partner with Rockwell, the approach that we have is, first of all, we bring a deep domain expertise. It is not only from Rockwell, but Rockwell with the extended partner network that we are having. And parallelly, we offer you a comprehensive consulting and delivery capability. So it is not only giving only consulting services or providing or setting the path, but also we help you to build the go along with that and build the deploy the automation or the required the digitization piece in your operation. So this is the model that Rockwell follows, which we say the life cycle support. So that it starts with the design. So when we are actually doing the design, so it includes the systems and design simulation, functional safety assessment, front-end engineering, and working as a main automation contractor who can help and connect with all the piece of automation, all the different OEMs who are actually coming with the different piece of automation, and help you to integrate on a common overall architecture. Second is the build, how we are actually helping to build this. So that means that it's starting from building the application, building the control, installation, startups, all that required for a implementation of automation or IS solution. Then sustain it. So it is actually to maintain the system for a lifelong, the entire life of the project, and then subsequently to improve it on top of that, whatever the further for further improvement is there. So this is how we actually approach a life cycle approach for the entire project. And this is not only Rockwell, but Rockwell is having a comprehensive, partner network like the PTC, Anderson, Hauser, Cisco, and Microsoft, and also Rockwell's, Rockwell and Rockwell's acquired organization like Avnet, Emulate 3D, and Mestec. So this is a complete ecosystem that has been built, which actually help you to, deploy the complete automation and digital platform for a complete supply chain requirement. So this is the message that I wanted to give. So any questions, any point, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Manas. Thank you so much. Manas, will it be okay if we take these questions offline later?
Yeah, thank you.
Aisha, can we have the poll question, please? Okay, so we have 30 seconds to answer. Can we have the answer, please? Manas, you have to say anything on this?
Yeah, so I think I saw this. This is the end-to-end traceability is one of the area of interest. So I think that is what we discussed, and we can obviously implement a technology which will help the end-to-end traceability and the genealogy of the product, starting from the final product to the raw material. We have got that. We can help this thing to implement. Yeah.
Can we have the next question, poll question, please? Can you have the answers? Wonderful. So Manas, you have 60% audience who wants you to get in touch with you and your team.
That's great. So I think we will be reaching out to each one of you and support at the best to help you to go on your digital journey. Thank you.
Perfect. With this, we have come to an end of the event. We would, on behalf of Manufacturing Today and ITP, we had a very enlightening and deep dive conversation. We started with panel one, headed by Arvind and the other panelists. Again, we had second panel discussion. Again, Shriram moderated that with other Coca-Cola, Reliance Retail and Network Technologies. We thank you everyone, and from a content perspective, we want to be serving you with a lot more new coming up from Manufacturing Today, and we wanted to thank everyone from the two panelists to the attendees, and we'll come back with the post-event report to you. Thank you everyone.